Hello, everyone. I'm Joe, aka Eldridge Homer,
I like the sound of that.
And I am Bill, aka Lost Star Wars.
The Force is strong with this one.
and we are the Trade Federation, the only podcast dedicated to top Star Wars card trader on iOS and Android devices. So, big changes this week. Why don't you start us off talking about what has gone down over the past week?
Well, let's first mention that we recorded a second episode, and it was all about opening up Windu packs to get inserts, and that strategy is gone now. So basically the change is that the inserts they no longer come out in in all base packs. The inserts come out in the Boba Fett packs now, which are 5,000 credits, and it's about 5 times more expensive to buy those packs. That happened on Monday, and it was it stirred quite an uproar in the community, and people had to really change their strategy. So the episode we recorded last week, based on really maximizing the number of inserts you could get through Windu packs, is out the window.
Yeah, that was it was kind of a frustrating thing to be so excited to put out our first episode of the podcast, and then everybody talked about that for an hour. They were very excited, and then it seemed like crushing defeat, and that's all everybody talked about for the rest of the day.
Definitely.
And we'll release that second episode somewhere down the line just for laughs, I think. It'll be the people who come late and pick that episode up will be like, what? How good did they have it back in the day?
Right, the glory days. All things considered, it's understandable why they did it. They maybe communicated it a little poorly, or perhaps pulled the Band-Aid off a little too fast, or however you want to describe it. But, that change was ultimately going to be coming, and I think it's manageable. At first, I was like, wow, there's no way I can sort of continue, having as much fun as I was having in maintaining the kinds of constant trades all the time. But I think it's going to be manageable, even for the free-to-play people, for as long as they continue to give us a decent number of daily credits.
Yeah, it was gloom and doom for a lot of people. I mean, the fan feed was a mess for the first maybe even couple days. Reddit exploded, of course. I think a lot of people just quit. I think they might have kept to their promise of, I'm not doing this anymore. They put their cards on eBay and they got out. I was kind of surprised that
they
cashed out
quick.
Just went.
Well, if they were all to go, if it was going to be a mass exodus, which I don't think it was, I think that the best strategy to have done, if you wanted to kind of get something out of it, would have been to cash out quick, because I think if everybody was going to go, then the bubble would have burst in terms of real world card value, and it just, everything would have come crashing down because everybody's cards would have been on eBay.
Yeah, I thought probably the people who wanted out anyway picked a good time to unload them and run. But it hasn't ended up being as big of a deal. When I was frustrated at first, not just because it kind of overshadowed our podcast that we had just released, but I was like, man, I feel like I'm not going to get anything anymore. But, I haven't had that much trouble. In fact, the biggest thing I notice is that I'm this weird guy who likes buying the expensive packs, like Geonosis and Shreds and whatever, but I always felt like it was such a waste. So I would just buy the Mace Windus, and then I would trade them up. Now I don't feel like it's a waste. I can just open the packs I actually want and try to get the cards I want. A little less trading, but,
Yeah, and everything is it's way more balanced in terms of you don't feel like a fool buying Geonosis packs, because everything kind of has the same investment value, based on your credits. So that in that way it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I was wondering if it would somehow devalue the marathon sets, and a lot of people were pretty quick to say, well, no, now every marathon card is worth 5 times as much. But I wonder if that's entirely true, just because, like, there's a lot of marathons I used to go for them just to trade, and now they're worth nothing to me. Like, you couldn't give me a connection card for my Geonosis cards. I'd rather have Geonosis. I just like them better. So the connection cards are useless to me, and so are, frankly, Vintages and Wide Visions. Anything I'm not going to be able to collect the full set of, I've pretty much just started getting rid of. Like, I don't care anymore. It's useless to me. If it's useful to you, give me something I want, you get what you want, and everybody's happy.
Yeah, and I think everything kind of returns to values in terms of where it was, because there's a lot of people that were collecting everything, and that's just no longer possible anymore. So there's a lot of people just like you who suddenly don't value these particular sets as much. You know, there's still a lot of trade value in them, but they're not seeking them.
Yeah, I had been trying for a while to go after Topps Choice, and it just became clear to me that Porkins and Wicket, after I got rid of them for a pittance, it turns out, a month and a half ago, I just wasn't going to get it back. So I actually traded away my Topps Choice Sabine today to Open Window Time. Shout out, bud.
Oh, nice.
Because I saw him on there, he was asking for it, and I went, you know what, I bet he's got something I want. I ended up getting the Grievous shred I was looking for, and a big pile of golds and a bunch of other stuff he was just trying to get rid of. So, hey, it worked for me, it worked for him, everybody's happy.
Yeah, he's one of the guys I see on probably the way a lot of people see me, because I'm constantly on there posting again and again my super specific trade offers that some people get offended by sometimes, but Open Window Time is definitely like somebody I see on there all the time. And it's nice to see other Redditors poking around on there a lot.
He seems like one of those people that if you play the game, you know who he is. You have an idea. You've tried to trade him, or you've seen him posting. His little Stormtrooper helmet icon is very noticeable when he's posting in there. You always know it's him. So, hey, I finally got to trade with him. I had tried before, but he knows what things are worth way better than I do.
Yeah, he's the one who's posted some pretty, like, detailed trade, I don't know what you call them, like trade chains, you know, where he says I started off with, and he usually trades with, like, if this is the guy I'm thinking of, he trades with, like, kind of high-end cards, like Vintages and stuff, and then says, okay, I traded, these two for these other three, and then I turn these around and sort of crosses them out and says, this is ultimately what I traded for. I'm not making a ton of sense there, but if I'm correct, he's posted some pretty cool trade chains.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I've seen those. It's like Star Wars trade arithmetic or something, where he's like, I got this out of this, and then I cancel these out, and the end result is I got these for nothing, basically. Yeah, he's brilliant. So I think you and I are on the same page. We feel like the Boba changes are, if not necessarily a positive thing, because I feel weird to say, yes, it's a good thing that it happened, but it certainly doesn't seem as negative as what the knee-jerk reaction was when it first came out.
Yeah, I would agree. It's shocking and it hurts and everything else, but it's not the end, you know?
For sure. I felt bad for Steve. I'm not gonna lie. Top Steve on Twitter, Senator Steve in the game. I kind of felt bad for him. I don't know. He won me over, I think, after a couple days of laying low, and probably I'm sure a lot of people would have done the same, because it was internet rage, you know, both barrels, everything coming at him for probably 2 or 3 days. And then I thought it was really cool of him actually to come to the Star Wars Trader sub and answer people's questions and sort of, you know, I mean, he took his licks, I think, and in the end, I felt like he still seems like a pretty cool guy.
Yeah, I think he, at first, it was a little off-putting that there was no communication at all, but then you think, all right, so this guy's just getting tweet after tweet after tweet of negative, harsh anger. So, you know, you just turn your Twitter notifications off and sort of ignore it for a couple of days, and then come back when you're ready to formulate some commentary and some response, instead of maybe engaging in that kind of like angry banter.
Yeah, especially on the internet. I think it's a smart thing to do, to probably just let cooler heads prevail walk away from it for a little bit. Don't, sink down, because there's only so much abuse you can take, I think, before you start giving it back. And when your job is basically to take that abuse, you're probably better off just taking it in silence and not, stooping to the level of calling your fans idiots or, I think it turned out pretty well for him in the end. I don't think that too many people probably rage quit in the grand scheme of things.
No, most of the familiar names that, that I was used to seeing, I think I still see in terms of names I recognize on the fan feed and on the sub as well. And then also I don't think there's there's only a small number of people on Twitter that I kind of interact with. And I don't think any of them quit either.
One thing I do want to say, though, I don't know if this is going to upset anybody. Hopefully not. But the thing that was kind of frustrating to me was when it all came out. I mean, everybody was a little upset, and that's fine. They had a right to be, I think, because maybe we should have been notified ahead of time. But I thought it was kind of disturbing how there were some people, and they were clearly the big money people, who were sort of gloating about it, like, finally you free players get what's coming to you or whatever. Like, I pay for this game, and, everybody else should be paying as much as I am, or should be, footing their end of the bill instead of just being free players and everything. I thought that was kind of weird. It takes all kinds to run a game like this. Without the free people, there's like 10 guys swapping the same cards around, so I don't know. It just kind of frustrates me. I think of us, everybody using the app as a community, and it frustrates me when they turn on each other a little bit. I know that there are bad seeds in anything or whatever, but to gloat about the fact that you've spent more money for it and everybody else is getting their just desserts now seemed a little sad, I thought.
Yeah, and I mean, some of that, I chalk that up to the anonymity of the internet as well. People say and do things that they normally wouldn't say and do in real life. It would be kind of cool to have a big spender on the show sometime, I think.
For sure, yeah. There's a lot of people I think would probably be great guests. Open Window Time, for sure. I don't know if he's a big spender or if he's just a genius as far as trading is concerned. I would bet maybe it's a little of both.
Could be.
But yeah, if there's any big spenders listening, I mean, we'll have you on. Give us a couple weeks and we'll want people on for sure, just to talk about pretty much anything. I'd love to hear different perspectives, from ours on the game.
Yeah, and last week, when we were sort of recording the strategy episode that is completely useless now, I was kind of mentioning the fact that I probably have a strategy that some of these people out there can completely pick apart and find better ways to improve. So I would love to just talk to more people, especially people who I respect on the sub and people who I see kind of trading and doing fair deals and stuff, and see, just different insights on ideas for trades.
I almost wish there was a place where we could interact more directly with people. Like Reddit's really good, but if I don't know, maybe we should just set something up. I've actually thought maybe we should have like a Trade Federation Instagram account or something, just because you guys listening don't know this, but Bill sends me these things where he's taken all these pictures of stuff he's done in the game with paragraphs of commentary about why, and they're brilliant. I wouldn't know half as much about this game if you didn't send me those things. I love it every time.
Yeah, and there's other people doing that too, and Open Window Time's one of them, but you'll find people, especially on the sub, sharing their Imager albums, with the photo commentary on it in terms of what they were thinking at this point in this trade and why they accepted this. And my thing tends to be, and we're getting a little bit into strategy here, but I tend to, if I get a random offer that I think is really good, even if it's something that I don't really want to get rid of, like say it's my single of Topps Choice Sabine or something like that, I'll float another trade out there. I'll float it on the feed to see if I can get another offer that gets me a Sabine back for less than what that trade is that's coming in, because usually that trade that's coming in, I'm like, wow, that's a good deal. I just don't want to trade my Sabine. And so a lot of those ones I share with you are those chains where I have this like house of cards of like 3 or 4 trades that if they all come in right, then I hit accept. And it turns out to be sort of like a nice net, in terms of, card value.
Yeah. I feel like I should formulate more of a strategy or something. I don't really know. Well, I'm in sort of the enviable but maybe unenviable position based on what this game is. I sort of have everything I'm looking for at the moment. I completed both of my white and blue Geonosis sets, which is my big thing I was working on. I've got all 3 of the shreds so far. I've got GMs and bounties are the only marathons that I have every card for, so they're the only ones I feel any need to spend any money on. So I'm kind of in a holding pattern now, just sitting here and waiting to see what comes next and what I want to spend my money on, and maybe I'll have plenty to spend when that time comes that I can pull the trigger.
I think GM and bounty, aside from the fact that they have a higher count, in addition to that, I think they're super attractive because the GMs are going to often be available on Tuesday when the bounties release, and if you pull a bounty, you get your bounty back. I mean, it's not as the ratio of getting that credit reward isn't as much anymore, but everything helps now. I mean, every little bit you can get back is huge. So I think pulling cards on Tuesdays and going for the GMs and bounties is actually a pretty good strategy.
Yeah, I think that's probably what I'm going to do. Tuesday is going to be my Vintage Thursday, which brings me to the next point. We had a little bit of trouble yesterday that you alerted me to about the Luke Vintage card. Can you talk about what happened there?
Yeah, so yesterday, Thursday, the Red 5 standing by. It's actually not called Red 5 standing by. It's called Luke Prepares for Battle, and it's a pretty sweet vintage of Luke climbing into the X-Wing on Yavin. And it was the lowest count vintage yet. And they dropped the odds back down. It had been 1 in 80 packs prior, or 1 in 75 packs, and then all of a sudden it's 1 in 50 packs. And even with the more expensive packs, I just knew it was going to sell out super fast. And so I got on, and it was a 415 release, and 415 rolls around, and I'm just opening packs, tons of packs, and the thing's just lagging, and packs aren't opening, and I'm getting data error messages. So I'm kind of checking Twitter to see what's going on. But meanwhile, I'm just opening as many packs as I can, and they seem to be just canceling out. And pretty much everybody else is having the same experience as me at this point. And it seems like the packs are just not opening. So, a little time goes by, and there are some tweets about servers are lagging, but it wasn't like Knight Brothers. It wasn't like the third Knight Brothers card, the actual Knight Brothers, where they said, okay, we're having a lot of server problems. Let's stop it and then get things rebooted and then start again in an hour or 45 minutes or however long that was. They kind of went with it because it wasn't enough to totally crash everything down. It was still working. It was just super laggy. And turns out all of those like expired or canceled data error packs were all being purchased. So everyone all of a sudden things start refreshing and catching up, and you start to see that your credits have gone down below zero. They've gone into the negative. My credits actually went to negative 160,000. And a lot of other people were posting online that they were in that same kind of range. And that was about the time when the card was just about to sell out. So that's a pretty big problem. They sort of over committed accounts, and then all these people are in the negative. So what Topps ended up doing was, they decided to refund. They kind of like did a half reset of that whole hour from 4:15 to 5:15, and they said, okay, we're going to refund all the money that was spent within that hour, except everybody can keep the cards. The big change was that they decided to make the vintage Luke a non-chase card, so it was the card, people got to keep the card, but they just didn't have to have it in order to complete the marathon set, in order to complete the vintage set. So the vintage set is now currently the whole set is 29 cards, and the first phase or wave of it is now 9 cards. And for the most part, I would say the majority of people are happy with that, but there's 2 major parties who are and probably rightfully should be kind of upset. The bigger one, I think, is the people who spent that first preview hour of actual the more expensive packs, and those are the people who had to spend money to make those, to unlock those packs.
Right, the master access people.
Yes, master access. None of those people got their credits returned. So they kind of, nothing changed for them. Whereas all of the people who were buying the Boba Fett packs got all of their money refunded. And there's something to be said with the experience that people were having from 4.15 to 5.15 was terrible. It was like very poor app quality and tons of data errors and all of that stuff, and you're not sure like what you're pulling. So there is something to be said about being compensated for the bad performance. But yeah, I do think that the master pack people kind of got screwed a little bit there. And then the other people who got, maybe it's hard to say because nobody really knows what the card's valued at, and it seems to be holding its value, so I'm not so sure about this one anymore. But the folks who traded right away, and if you trade right away for a vintage when it comes out, you're paying way, way more than it's probably going to be worth in 2 days. And so these people are paying boatloads of cards. They're playing multiple other vintages. And again, it's really hard to say what it would have been because we haven't had one of this rarity yet. And it's really hard to say, what it's going to be considering it's not a chase card anymore. But it's still a low count vintage that only has that version. It doesn't have any other parallels of it. It's a pretty rare card. So those people, depending on how you look at it, maybe they got the short end of the stick on it too a little bit.
From what I've seen in the fan feed, and this didn't affect me at all because I'm one of the 6 people using the app or whatever who I don't even try for vintages. I can't even be bothered. The odds are such that I'm not even gonna go for it. But from looking in the fan feed, it seems like there are people who have vintage Luke right now. They think it's worth a ton because it's still a vintage and it's the lowest count vintage and they want a lot for it. And the people who don't have it but do want it don't think it's worth anything, of course. And they're just saying, don't forget, it's not part of the chase anymore, so I'll give you 3 golds for it. It's kind of funny to watch as people try to ascertain the value. It is very typical of the fan feed.
Depending on what else comes around, and again, we have 22 more cards, but I can't see them really going much lower than that count. And I could see them going back up a little bit and maybe even going over 2,000 to try to alleviate some of the madness of Thursday. Like unless they make upgrades to their servers, or change something about it. I don't know, like what they have to change something because it's been laggy for the last few weeks, and now all of a sudden there's crazy errors going on. So, I mean, something has to change, and I could see them upping the rarity a little bit, maybe to 2,500. They don't want to go too high because then the newer cards will just not fit in terms of prestige or whatever with the set. But yeah, they need to do something.
Here's the question I want to put to you real quick. I feel like I need your input on it. As a person who doesn't bother collecting the vintages, I thought it was pretty awesome that they refunded the credits of everybody who was having problems during the hour or whatever. But it seems to me, and there are a bunch of people who are on my side, and of course there are people who are against me, I'm not entirely sure that it was worth removing it from the chase. I mean, there's still, 1,250 of them or whatever it is out there. That's the same as it was ever going to be. Do you think it was overkill removing it from the chase, or do you think that was necessary after the problems they had?
It seemed super obvious at the time that that's what they should do. Like, that, it made a lot of sense to me that, all right, if we're going to give all these free credit, basically if we're going to, it's the thing that balances out for Topps, I think. If we're going to give all of these free credits back and essentially give all these free packs in a boatload of free Max Rebo Fans Choice cards, then Topps kind of said, okay, we're not going to give you this sort of free value, because that's where like all those packs, all those credits, whatever, that card would have rivaled Tarkin, I think, easily. I don't really know if it would have been equal to Tarkin, but it definitely wouldn't have been Han. But it would have been the most valued one. So they're removing some of that value by removing it from the chase. And I guess I don't know that necessarily affects Topps, but to them, I think it's not giving away free cards that are worth a ton and that people can go out and trade for a bunch of stuff.
So you think it was a way to devalue the card as an offset to the fact that most people got them for free. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know that I'm making a ton of sense, and I'm kind of questioning my own logic now, but for some reason to me it just seemed obvious that, it's they're just giving away less. It's less that they're giving for free by doing that.
Yeah, when you say that, I guess it does make more sense to me. I'm kind of surprised they didn't just leave it in, but then I guess when you think about the idea that not only did everybody get their credits back, but some of those people might have purchased those vintages with credits they didn't actually have since everyone was dipping below. This is the time I wish I had been trying for it. I would have gotten all that money back anyway. Actually, I bought one Boba Fett pack at like $4.18 just because I figured I've been on kind of a hot streak. I'll see if I can pull it. And it just crashed the app and deducted my $5,000, and I didn't get it. And they never gave me that $5,000 back. I was a little disappointed. But I guess it's the people who spent, $800,000 who are really the ones hurting. So I won't cry about it too much.
Yeah, it's interesting. I bet one of my, I pulled two, and I was negative 160. So I have no idea because I couldn't see any of them. In fact, I only saw one. Remember when we were texting and I was like, yeah, I got one. And you were like, nice. At that point, I could only see one. And someone else, Dark Lord Bill on Twitter, who I chat with a lot, he was like, oh no, you got two. He could see from his end that I had two. And so it took a while, but it ultimately showed up. So I'm assuming like one of those probably was actually purchased with negative credits, which I'm sure happened for a lot of people. So they might have been tempted. I think the temptation might have been to just yank the cards. I think that they probably considered that, and maybe they were thinking back to Monday and the kind of tentative truce. I don't know, the animosity that was out there Monday. Maybe they were just trying not to have that happen again, and they said, no, let's not yank the card. Let's let the card be. Just remove it from the chase.
Yeah, I think all told, it probably turned out pretty well. I might be a little frustrated if I had spent like $100 to get a ton of extra credits and master access, and then not pulled anything, or pulled just one and then had it removed from the chase and everything. But I think we've gone a little long. We've probably covered just about everything we wanted to. But real quick before we close, you told me a little bit about you traded one of your two vintage Lukes and got a pretty good deal. Do you want to tell everybody about your trading it away early, and then let me know, because I don't know, how that turned out with the other guy?
So it was shortly after the announcement that that it would be pulled from the chase, and I decided, okay, now might be my chance to get something decent out of this. If this is going to end up being, and actually Dark Lord Bill kind of was like, man, this thing's going to be worthless now. And I kind of got panicky, and I was like, all right, I'm going to go try to trade it, and I ended up getting a vintage Jawa and a Han quote, the first quote, which, at the time I was like, I'm just going to take it. I'm just going to take what it is. And, it turns out it's probably still roughly like the same. Maybe it's worth just a vintage Jawa, but I mean, a Han quote's not worth that much. But I was kind of thinking, all right, so afterwards I was thinking, what if this guy didn't know? What if he didn't know that the card was removed from the chase? He might come back looking for it. So I had to think to myself, all right, am I going to give it back? And I decided that I would if he came back. And he actually hasn't come back. He hasn't come back seeking it. And now the fact that he hasn't come back seeking it, I'm kind of like, wow, did I, this card might actually be kind of holding its value. So kind of interesting experience there. It's funny that I was thinking to myself, this guy has 3 vintage Hans. I can't imagine that he's not on top of this information. And maybe he was. Maybe he didn't have at the time. He didn't have the vintage Luke, so I'm sure he wanted it. I'd imagine if he had waited a little bit longer, he might have gotten it for cheaper. But it's hard to say.
I have to assume if you're sitting on 3 vintage Hans, then you're probably sort of a completionist. Maybe he doesn't care a little if he, overpaid a little bit for it. He's got the card
right
now. He can say, my collection is complete regardless of the fact that it doesn't, count for an award. If you want all the cards, you want all the cards. And that's pretty much all there is to it, I think.
I think this card is going to, after the 30 weeks, I think this card is going to be super sought after. It's a low count, and it'll be kind of equal to everything else at that point. But what's really interesting to me will be in the next couple of weeks, or really like in 5 days, where it settles at. It's still kind of hot new. It's the current release vintage. It's a day old. It's barely 24 hours old. So I think it's still pretty hot, and a lot of people are trading them back and forth. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what it takes to get one in a week from now.
Yeah, it's always fun to watch the different trends of the cards as they come and go. They come red hot and everybody's swapping for them, and then it kind of dies down after a few days. So, yeah, I think in future episodes we will probably talk a little bit more about strategy as we come to grips with the way things are now. And one thing I really want to talk about with you, and maybe this would be a good one to have like open window time or somebody on, is like values of things that aren't too common. Like golds are a little more common now, but some people really love greens. Some people don't care about greens. Some people think a green is worth 4 golds. Some people think a gold is worth 4 greens. I mean, it's all over the place. So I would really like to get a range of opinions on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that would be great to have an episode where we talk about the colored award cards, which I think are really cool and attractive, but tough to seek when you're trying to get all of these marathon sets.
Yeah, for sure. I want to take a quick minute as we're wrapping up to say thanks to everybody who's reviewed it on iTunes. We definitely appreciate that. If you guys want to shoot over there and give us a review, but you don't have to. And the thing that I think is really cool is that I've had a couple of people, and I know you have too, send a trade with a message in game, just mentioning, that they heard the show and enjoyed it. That makes my day. I don't know why, but it's so cool to me.
Oh, absolutely! I was so excited when the first person that did that sent me a message, like a 1-to-1 trade, saying, "Hey, I listened to the show and enjoyed it. Great to hear, and really thanks for listening."
Yeah, for sure. Thanks to everybody for, supporting the show in the ways that you have and everything. And we hope you like episodes as we go forward. Now that we're adjusting to the way things are, I think everybody, for the most part, is planning on sticking around. So we plan on sticking around to keep doing the show for a long while to come.
And one more thing to mention is that we'll also be found on the website retrozap.com as well.
Ah, yes, that is good to mention. That site is so awesome, and Bill worked out a nice little, what would you call that, sort of a partnership with them for this show. I think anybody should check out that site anyway, if you like Star Wars or just kind of really any sort of nerd culture stuff, but Star Wars in particular. I think it's such a cool site.
Yeah, go check out Joe. His name is Joe Tavano. Go check out his article on the fact that, or the theory that Padme did not die of a broken heart. It's a really great read. It's really interesting and great analysis of the prequels of Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, I think with all the cool stuff they have on that site, I am pretty honored that our show is going to be listed among the content they have there. It's very exciting.
Me too.
So, I can't believe I didn't say it earlier. If you're listening to this on the day of release, happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. I mean, come on. I can't believe I forgot.
May the 4th be with you.
All right, I think that's it for us this week. All right, cool. Everybody, happy trading.
Happy hunting.